day has been long and we have heard a lot of valuable information, and multiple times there have been mentioned one thing, which is security. And at the core of security, of course, are data. And data are transferred, data are aggregated, data are stored. And that's the topic for this discussion. The age of quantum computing is coming up, and the question is how we're going to live in this era. What's going to be cryptography challenges? You can ask the questions online, and we again have a poll there. Do you follow the latest technology news and trends with the purpose of knowing how to safely store your data? Well, that's an interesting hobby, to read news about storing data. But please fill in poll so we can see. So the topic is secure data transfer, and it will be moderated by Burt Helm. Round of applause.
Hi guys, thank you so much for joining us. As my friend Ernest just said, this talk is about data security and quantum computing. These are two phrases that typically, when you mention them together, especially with computer scientists, cybersecurity executives, or telecommunications executives, they get a little bit jumpy. And we're going to find out why, because I'm about to introduce to you 5 of the jumpiest men who are thinking, all have stakes in the secure transfer of data or are involved with the development of quantum computing. And we'll talk about why those two things are going to intersect and why it matters and what to do about it, both how to manage the risks and how to capitalize on the opportunities. Directly to my left is Professor Andris Ambainis. He is a professor of computing at the University of Latvia. He is one of the leading authorities on quantum information theory and quantum computing. Richard Feynman, the late great physicist, once said that nobody understands quantum mechanics. Professor Ambainis doesn't understand it the most, right? Something like that. And we're really lucky to have him here to be our science expert. Next to him is Evijs Taube. He is on the board of this sponsor, LRTVC, and he is head of its technology division, looking at things including finding ways to distribute quantum algorithms and key exchanges in safe ways to basically make quantum safe cryptography, and we'll hear more from him about that. Next to him is Egons. Egons is the security director at LMT. He is responsible, therefore, for the secure data transfer of all the data going in and out of your mobile phones today and always. No pressure, Egons. And then finally here in person is Zois Kokkonis from the European Space Agency. And he is in charge of future programs there, and one of the things they are working on is looking at quantum key distribution via satellites. One of ESA's missions is working to find ways that the satellite and space industries can support industries here on the ground. And also joining us remotely from space, Luxembourg, is Andris Adelsbach, and he is the Vice President of Group Information and Cybersecurity at SES, which means he looks at making sure there is secure data transmitted up to their network of 70 satellites. Is that correct? And is also looking at how those satellites could be involved in quantum key distribution in the future. So we'll talk about that. To start it off, though, I want to kind of bring this to life for those of us who have not been, didn't take a time to brush up on their quantum logic tables today, or weren't looking at their various Schrodinger equations. And just let's talk about the implications of what it means when you have powerful quantum computing. And to do that, I think one kind of fun, silly hypothetical. Let's imagine, this is probably not going to happen, but tomorrow, the CEOs of Apple and Google go on stage together. They both take out an iOS phone and an Android phone, and they say, these are the new phones that each have quantum chips preloaded. They're powerful, they're cheap, they're on sale now. Okay, enjoy, goodbye. They're unlocked. What happens, Professor Ambainis, when that happens? And I'm curious, when you hear, let's say you watch that press conference, what's the first call you make, and what do you say?
Well, I guess the first call would be to find out how powerful exactly are those chips. So if they are powerful enough, they would be able to break all the secret key encryption infrastructure that we have. So in that case, the next calls would probably have to be to Latvian Radio and Television Center, LMT, all the other major telecommunications and data communications.
Okay, so Professor Ambainis just called you both, Egons at LMT and Evijs at the Latvian Radio and Television Center. Who do you call next? What does this mean that he said that all of our standard encryption can essentially be broken now? Go ahead, Evijs.
Okay, yeah, if I can start, yeah. Hi, everybody. So actually, in fact, we got this call already like almost 2 years ago. So we got this call from the scientists, yeah, not exactly from Andris, but the others. And basically, this is all about that we are sitting here and discussing. Yeah, and there are activities, and actually there is a good thing is that there is even the EU financing for the projects to fight with these two phones or whatever is coming. So basically to be ready.
Yeah, and we'll talk about
luckily it hasn't happened yet, so the phones are not there, but things are
Given
coming.
that you got that call, what was it that helped you get back to bed that night? Because I think the situation where all of our codes are going to be decrypted in that or could be is a little bit scarier.
It's scary, but we hope we still have some time, so we are acting now.
Gotcha. Now, Egons.
From security leadership point of view, well, we could compare that suddenly all doors are open in this area, all locks are open. In reality, one thief or even a group of thieves cannot rob everybody immediately, and we probably also have another means of security. Maybe if the locks are broken, maybe we have still physical guards, we have tourniquets, procedures, etc. in place. From supply chain perspective, if somebody comes with a quantum computer with enough qubits, that would be immediately put on a sanctioned goods list, so it cannot be freely moved around the world if it comes from the Western world. If it comes from somewhere else, we would see, but so far, well, we haven't seen like a even imaginable threat from outside world yet.
Andrei, up there in outer space / Luxembourg, what do you do when you hear that, when you get that call, and what does that mean for a network of satellites?
Yeah, I mean, first understanding obviously, yeah, how powerful this quantum computer really is, and then yeah, definitely giving a call to my CTO, telling him that we need to establish probably a task force to review the potential impacts and also mitigations that can be taken. Obviously, understanding that such a breakthrough in quantum computing would mostly impact public key crypto. It's really important to differentiate and make a detailed assessment of the actual impact of such a breakthrough.
Gotcha. Zois, can you tell us a little bit about the European Space Agency's stakeholders and how this question of quantum computing and the prospect of it coming to life affects
being a little more skeptical, I would start with taking a step back and considering first whether this would be a hoax. Because that is not unlikely in such situations where something is announced where you want to make. Then on a personal level, I think there's would be straightforward. You switch on your mobile phone because it's no longer encrypted, you cannot communicate, right? And how do you communicate? You start writing. You go buy a pen and you write on paper and you send a letter by post. You go buy stamps and so on. This is not what we're going to do. So we need to have a strategy and we need to prepare for that. And we need to prepare before this is the case. And this is, I believe, what all organizations are doing. Because implementing standards is not just an idea that you set up, but you need to have a path towards that. Even if you say, this algorithm is no longer secure enough, you need to develop the next algorithm and you need to bring it out. And this does not happen in 1 day or 2. So, as I said, my action would be, okay,
Well,
start
right.
writing on paper.
Turns out it was
nothing
a hoax.
digital any longer. That's not a solution.
Great. And it was a hoax. I made it up. And the hoax now stops here. I'm committing hoax seppuku and admitting it. But then what does that mean? I mean, I guess one of the questions that I have, and I want to just touch on this quickly because I want to spend time talking about how we prepare for the risks, because it does feel like something. I mean, is this something that is going to happen eventually? What is stopping? Why is that such an unrealistic scenario, Professor Ambainis? And what does performance look like now versus what it would need to be to have the scenario that Zois is describing of shut off your phones, start writing letters?
Yeah, I guess the difference is in how long computations can quantum computers perform. So what we have is right now is what are called intermediate scale noisy quantum computers. So first, intermediate scale means that they have relatively small number of quantum bits or qubits. It's not a problem by itself because a lot of encryption infrastructure can be broken with about 2,000 to 4,000 quantum bits. And the latest device from IBM has 400. So we are a factor of 10 away from that. IBM promises to be at 1,000 quantum bits by year 2024. Probably 4,000 in 5 years. So we will have the right number of quantum bits. But then the key difference is for how long computations can these quantum bits perform. And here we get to the noisy part. The current devices are noisy. So what they can perform are relatively short computations, and then after this short computation, the quantum state decoheres, and we can no longer get anything useful. And what we need for breaking codes is a very long computation on 2,000 quantum bits that would consist of millions or billions of steps of computation, as opposed to 10 or 20 steps that we can perform right now. So there is still some time, but it's measured in decades.
And yes, has IBM made any promises on when these 4,000 bits, the qubits, will cohere indefinitely, or at least for a manageable amount of time?
I think they expect to have these 4,000 quantum bits in a few years, but the key here is for how long can you compute with these quantum bits before quantum state going bad?
And is that just a matter of time, or is that a question that we simply have not figured out yet?
I think it's a matter of time, but here it's not one magnitude. It's not one order of magnitude that we need to improve. Here it's multiple orders of magnitude. It might be whatever 6 or 7 orders of magnitude, or it might be set of advances on both hardware and software sides simultaneously.
Gotcha. So this could be, it's a question mark, but nonetheless the stakes are high, and it means you need to prepare ahead of time to guard against this. Now, Evijs, you were telling me a little bit about some of the things that you guys have been working on to create quantum safe data transfer, essentially encryption algorithms or key exchange that can withstand a quantum computer's best brute force efforts to decrypt it. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, So what we did actually with big help of Latvian University in cooperation, so we have done some, let's say, real-life test with 2 quantum key distribution units. Yeah, funny, they are called Alice and Bob. So nice black boxes, and using our existing, like normal fiber optics network, we created real-life tests. So we have achieved pretty good distance, which was not like a physical limit yet, but it was 30 plus kilometers. And yeah, it was a lot of fun doing this test. So we first thought that it's like a normal fiber. The fiber optics is fiber optics also in Africa and Latvia, but it's not the case. So there were really not yet plug and play, since the units are using the single photons to exchange the quantum states.
Yeah.
So anyway, but we have done with the help of university and also our engineers, and we installed the, like, we can call it 100% secure channel, 34 kilometers from one side to another.
Wow. So they live 34 kilometers away from each other. They start to communicate, and then they kind of, the communication breaks down fairly shortly after that.
They agree.
Sounds like my parents.
Yeah, first it takes few minutes to agree that who is Alice, who is Bob. Then they are happy, and then they settle down, and then they are happy to exchange the keys. And the keys are quantum physics based, so you cannot break in, you cannot read.
It's fascinating that you have single photons going that distance. I mean, even that distance needs to be longer at a certain point, but it's amazing that you can observe quantum entanglement at that distance, and that we're seeing it larger differences. I think you said distances that were...
Yeah, the industry is developing. So what Professor Ambainis said, that's about quantum computing, but this QKD, it's a different thing. So probably part of the physics is, I don't know how big, is this similar, but the technology is different, but the distances are gradually improving. Gotcha. So now what we are hearing from the vendors, and vendors are not many, the longest distance is somewhere 120 plus kilometers. Of course, another story is about satellite channels. That's something else, but the physical fibers which are on the ground, this is now 120 plus,
Gotcha.
Around that distance.
And we'll get to the satellite discussion in a minute. I want to talk about a little more about preparing for the risks. This is one way of doing this, is looking at getting quantum key exchange that can that isn't vulnerable to a quantum computing, I guess I don't know if you'd call it an attack, but the brute force attempt to decrypt it. I'm curious about, when you're preparing for this as a risk, Egons, how are you thinking about this risk as an organization at LMT, or just as an executive? This is not something that's happening tomorrow. It does have it's a long way out. It has an uncertain kind of time horizon, but it's significant, certainly. What is that? I mean, how are you thinking about it, and how do you advise people who are also either CISOs or security directors to talk to their boards about, and their executive team about what it will take and when it should be a priority?
That's a great question. What we did last year, we signed a memorandum with also with Latvian University and one of the Latvian vendors, Microtik, who produces actually a lot of things, and like 5G routers, etc., in Latvia. So we are following up the industry. We are part of it. Of course, we do not have the academic power, but therefore we team up with academia. From the CISO point of view, it's about risk evaluation. And if we a little bit step away or sidestep, if some vulnerability is discovered in general, usually it's not within the seconds that everything is broken and dead. Usually it is vulnerabilities and some proof of concepts, then it's going to be weaponized, then it's going to be targeted on specific regions, areas, or industries. So it's not going to happen even not overnight. Sometimes it takes just days, sometimes it takes more than, well, months or years. So this is general approach, is to be within the community, to look after it, and also, well, My team has even the responsibility to read all the news and what's happening and to follow up so we can prepare better. And a little bit of reflection of this IBM and qubits. It seems that for the pragmatic, practical use in technological companies, increasing the key lengths could save us for extended period of time. Not forever, but we'll see.
Gotcha. Now, Andrei, you manage security. One of your hats is managing security for a network of 70 satellites. It's not so simple for you just pushing an update at this. You need to plan decades in advance because that's how long some of these satellites are up there. So how do you think about this as a problem for securing data that is being transmitted to and from your network of satellites?
Yeah, definitely. So in our specific case, so satellites have fortunately a long lifetime of 15 plus years. So you really need to think in advance when you want to make sure these the satellites and the infrastructure and the services are secure for the next years of operations. And that's why there's a let's say after a few crypto algorithms had been compromised in the past, there was the evolving concept of crypto agility, which basically means that you are able, or your applications are able to efficiently swap out underlying crypto primitives. And this is really something we are working to adopt more and more in our design and implementation, so that once we see that a crypto algorithm isn't anymore strong enough to mitigate from various threats, that we are able to swap out the underlying crypto algorithm by another one. Obviously, this requires a lot of standardization in the application APIs. You need to inventory the crypto algorithms you are using. So this is really a lot of effort, but if you want to ensure continuous security of our services, this is something we have to do as an organization.
Gotcha. Now, one of the things that came up during our calls preparing for this was that a project such as this, which requires updating and changing to make the kinds of key exchanges that take place quantum safe in the future, is massive and full of little details. It was sort of like, in one point, one of us was joking that this is like the sequel to Y2K that no one asked for. Is Y2K a fair reference of the kind of infrastructure upgrade we need to do, or not? And I'm also in the audience. How many people were alive for Y2K? Show of hands, everybody. You guys were definitely alive. Nobody's. Anybody work on it? Like actually work on that? Okay. Yeah. All right. Is that the comparison that you would draw? How do we decide? I mean, how would you characterize this change versus something like Y2K or something like just the everyday post of a 0-day vulnerability or exploit that everyone in the world has to address and respond to? Who'd like to answer that? Luis?
I would say the first big difference is that Y2K had a very specific date. This is something that we currently don't have. So we have the time, but we don't know how much time. And we should start the activities to prepare. Then, at least comparing to the level of software during the time of Y2K, I would say there were two main differences. One is that there was much less standardization and commonality. There were a lot more proprietary systems. The large part of systems which were vulnerable to Y2K were written in COBOL. Probably nobody knows any longer how this language was working.
They're not raising their hands, so they won't.
This was the approach and the idea. So this is why they were based. And right now, there's a lot, especially things that have to do with cryptography and so on. They are based on routines which are used by everybody. They are based on open source routines which are used in common libraries, tested and verified. And that is also the approach that should be taken. Go into standardization so that you can have the wide-scale deployments, which are both widely tested and reusable. So standardization is, I think, a key, and there are activities which should be supported, which are going to what you could call post-quantum cryptography, which supports it. And there are, of course, two approaches. One is that you have algorithms which are not vulnerable to quantum computers, at least in the way that we understand it right now, because before, sure, we didn't think that the other algorithms were vulnerable. And on the other side, you can have cryptography based on quantum capabilities, which is the quantum key distribution.
Professor Ambainis, do you have a point of view on how straightforward, I guess, hardening our defenses against powerful quantum computers will be? What sort of size or scale of undertaking we're talking about here?
Well, it's a major upgrade of our encryption infrastructure. So, as the previous speaker said, a lot of that are open source software components that are used by everyone. The challenge is to decide what algorithm do we put in there. The challenge is to develop new open source software components, and the challenge is to replace them everywhere. I think that's one of the challenges, is that there is so many places where these components are used, and we have to make sure that they are replaced in every one of those places. And at the moment, the main challenge is deciding on what exactly do we want to use. There are multiple alternatives to encryption that becomes insecure. And the first ones of them date back to 1970s. Some of them have been known for a long time.
Gotcha. Now, Evijs, do you have a point of view on this?
Yeah, very important is to add, I like this comparison with this year 2000 problem, but it's a bit different still, because here we are not talking about replacing the existing networks whatsoever, but here this QKD provided 100% secure keys on point A and B.
QKD meaning quantum key distribution.
Quantum key distribution, yeah. So basically what with this technology we are able to provide like unlimited number of unique synchronous keys, 100% secure. And these keys we can load in existing equipment, whatever switches and whatever we have on both ends.
Gotcha. And this is a great moment then.
So it's like additional layer of security.
So to talk about, if you're thinking about fiber optic cable, that can get pretty complicated pretty fast, which brings us to talking about opportunities, which brings us to satellites. Andre, do you want to tell us a little bit about, in your other hat, how, as we think about the opportunities that are available, and this is something, Zois, you will want to weigh in on too, what role will satellites play in cryptography in the future?
Yeah, I think so. Satellites can play an important role, specifically in quantum key exchange or distribution, because they do not suffer from the same, let's say, distortion characteristics that you find, for example, on the terrestrial networks. So a lot of the signal is traveling actually via the vacuum or the space vacuum, meaning that there's less distortion. And that's really one of the key advantages of satellites in this quantum key distribution, meaning that they can support the key distribution between two parties which are further apart than what we can achieve with terrestrial systems today. So in all the risks that come from quantum computing, there are definitely, as always in technology, there are always also opportunities that can be leveraged and which open a complete new field of research and even commercial opportunity.
Gotcha. Zois, and we're going to be able to take a few questions in just a few minutes, so get those ready. If people here in our local audience or online want to ask, we'll be turning it over to you shortly. Zois, what does the European Space Agency see as opportunities for business, because from stemming from quantum computing?
So from the European point of view, I think one significant aspect is the capability that satellites have to send, let's say, quantum information at longer distance. This has to do with the fact that there's no need for a repeater over longer distances, and quantum repeaters is something that we don't currently know really how to build. Apart from that, I believe that there is a very strong point, and this is something that the European Commission is focusing on and Europe is focusing on. It has to do with the resiliency of the network and of the connectivity capabilities. Space and satellites provide an alternative way and a network which is secure because it does not rely on the terrestrial infrastructure to the same extent. So it is something that should be there and to provide the resiliency. Whether the cryptography there is using quantum key distribution or something else, that is secondary. But to provide the data infrastructure, the communication infrastructure, and provide this in a resilient way, and provide this in a way which is accessible to everybody, that is the part where the satellites play a great role. So I would, let's say, get one step above from the quantum and address this aspect. Concretely on the quantum aspects, the European constellation, the European proposed constellation is explicitly focusing on integrating the European Quantum Internet, EuroQCI initiative, and the European Space Agency having specific programs and initiatives which are related to quantum. We see this as something which is an extension of optical communication in space, and is developed, and there are initiatives in focusing and facilitating the research for that. This has to do with the advantages that we will gain from quantum technology as it is evolving as Europe.
Professor Ambainis, what do you think of this idea of satellites being a leading option for quantum key distribution? Do you agree with that, or how do you see the applications coming to life in the world?
Yeah, so satellites certainly look very interesting here because satellites are something that one could use to provide quantum key distribution even on a battlefield in the Ukraine. So these satellite receivers are getting small enough so that they could be portable, and one could set them up in conditions where the wired communication would not exist.
Gotcha. Now, Evijs, do you have thoughts on just the...
I think usually, as with many other things, the truth is somewhere in between. And here we can talk definitely about redundancy. It's not about quantum, but redundancy at all. So I think this is a combination, so we must use the ground and the space in a good combination. And about the space satellites, what's good is that if you look from Ukrainian perspective, of course, question about the ground cables, and in particular about cables which are undersea. So this is a big question, and definitely needs additional redundancy. Anyway, all the redundancy just adds another resilience.
Great.
That's great.
Well, so far we have certainly raised more questions than we've answered, and I think that's the goal right now, is just framing this as something to think about and watch. I imagine you in the audience have some questions too. Ernie, would you like to take it from here?
Want to? Yes, I'm online. So we really do have a question, and it comes actually from the government. Considering the risks that quantum computing possess in the future, but the relatively early stage the technology is in at the moment, how would you specify the role of governments in ensuring data safety in the future? Investments in R&D, practical prevention measures, or something else entirely?
Who would
Lengthy question.
Did it say who in the government, or just said it's from the government?
It's Ministry of Environmental Protection and Regional Development, Republic of Latvia.
All right. Who wants to answer? That's an important question.
Yeah, I think investments in research and development are certainly something that is important at this stage. And there will probably be more of other support from government that will be needed at later stages.
Yeah, I can add that usually, well, the financing is the main part, but beside of the financing, there is a big gap of the actually people who are doing the paperwork, and this is the issue on many sides. So any European project needs like a lot of paperwork at the before the project, after the project, in between, and this is another topic, but I think that's very important.
Egons, go ahead.
And I would add to that that public-private cooperation is very important because, well, it would be an interest of everybody, so we cooperate at the early stage, not just, well, run to the problem and then start to regulate something or invent something. So public-private is something I would put a stress on.
That makes a lot of sense. And Zois, do you have a point of view on what...
If I would add to this, I would say that the government should also support through actions the awareness of the public on these topics. Because if you would consider what are the current security breaches, they don't necessarily have to do with breaking the code. They have, to a very large extent, the issue is that somebody is not following the practices that should be there. So these are aspects where governments, I believe, can play a big role and invest in that, in making the public aware that they should be using the currently decided cryptography or technology or protection measures and so on, and follow them.
Yeah.
So that's the culture, working on the culture.
Are there more questions?
No.
Okay, well, I mean, you raise a really interesting point, too, as I'm looking at 5GTechritory and thinking how we talk to the public about new technology that they don't fully understand. And as Richard Feynman said, no one understands quantum mechanics. So how we talk about this in a way that feels both comprehensible and also safe and not, I don't know, does anyone have quantum computing mind control yet? Professor Ambainis? But I guess that's the question is how do you see this as a public policy question?
Okay, that's a good question. In the context of quantum, we have not yet had the misunderstandings that have been around 5G or around vaccines. No, well, okay, I guess there is this segment of quantum esoterics, quantum medicine, quantum effect being used to sell all kinds of quark remedies. But okay, that's something else. That's quantum being used for marketing purposes of pseudoscience.
That's right. That idea of a quantum. I think when you do have a phone with a quantum chip, it probably will not actually be a quantum computer. It will be a marketing term, and that's probably coming. Once it's possible, we will market it, certainly. I want to give the people in the audience a chance. Does anyone have questions for these panelists?
Audience? Questions? Everyone is shy about the topic.
Yeah.
Quantum computing.
It's a little intimidating. Yeah. I mean, the other thing I'm curious about is just how do you explain, I guess, if when people leave here, someone says, what did you just spend the last hour doing? And they'll say, well, it was about quantum computing and encryption. And they say, well, what's that? Do you have ways that you have made this very easy to understand for your students when you say, here is what, if we just rewind for a second and say, this is what is actually, why is it that quantum computers are able to break codes so much faster than regular ones. Is there a good answer, or is that something where you just tell them to go to Wikipedia and leave you alone?
Yeah, I guess a short explanation is that there is some mathematical structure present in our codes, and this structure is necessary for them to function. And there is a way how quantum computers can detect this structure. So this structure corresponds to finding periods of certain functions, and quantum computers are able to catch those periods, which is something that we can't do on an ordinary computer. And it's a highly specific mathematical problem, and for that reason, it doesn't rule out existence of cryptography that is secure against quantum. What happens is that it breaks those crypto systems that we are using now. It doesn't break every feasible crypto system in the future.
Gotcha. And then the last question, because I think we have 2 minutes left, is simply how do people, what are all of your advice for how to keep tabs on this subject? It is complex, it is hard, but it also has big implications. It's also fascinating if you start to really think about quantum entanglement and what photons are actually doing and how you can use that to do very sophisticated math. Anyone have any recommendations of just how you're keeping tabs on this subject, or what the audience should do? Should they keep caring about this?
I think very important is to, we can call it even starting with baby steps, and make this new technology, like putting it close to production environment. And actually what we are about to start in next couple of years is a real project. It's EU funded. So the project goal is to secure, using QKD, the connection in between the main most critical data centers. We can call it like a main backbone. And then let's see how the technology will develop. So right now the equipment is quite expensive, but with development, like with traditional computing, the prices are going down, the capabilities are going up. So most likely it will happen, no question. And then we will expand. So starting with a backbone, with baby steps, and then expand further. Maybe it will go even to the single cell phone. Maybe not in 20 years, who knows?
Evijs, thank you so much. Yes, it's so cool to hear about the work that's actually taking place, and then what's theoretically possible, and keeping tabs on this. Egons, you
I would surely say that put quantum computing on your innovation strategy and agenda. Look what's happening, have a little bit of R&D budget, and be part of it.
Very cool. All right. Our time is at 0. With that, I think I will hand things back over to you, Ernest, unless if our panelists have a burning thing they have to say to this audience. Okay. Ernest, thank you so much.
The poll data have come in. So 89% of you follow the news about data safety. So adding to the list of your on your reading list probably is figure out what the quantum computing thing is. So that might be something to dig in, because you're curious and want to know stuff. So thank you, panelists.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.